Have you ever had that moment when your child says something that makes your heart stop? Imagine being at your ex's wedding when your 8-year-old son grabs the microphone and starts revealing family secrets. Stay until the end to discover what my son revealed that day and how it changed everything between me and my ex-husband forever. Welcome to Plot Twist Life, where real stories take unexpected turns that will leave you speechless. Before we dive into today's emotional roller coaster, hit that subscribe button and notification bell to never miss another jaw-dropping story that might just change your perspective on life. I never thought I'd be sitting at my ex-husband's wedding, yet there I was, perched uncomfortably at a table near the back, watching Mark exchange vows with Vanessa, a woman he'd met just 8 months after our divorce was finalized. Our son Ethan was the ring bearer role he had been practicing for weeks, with an enthusiasm that both warmed and broke my heart simultaneously. The ceremony was beautiful, I had to admit. The venue was a rustic barn in Vermont that had been transformed with fairy lights and wildflowers, exactly the kind of wedding I had always dreamed of having. Our own wedding 7 years ago had been a rushed courthouse affair because I was already 5 months pregnant with Ethan. Mark had promised we would renew our vows somewhere special one day. I guess he was finally fulfilling that promise, just not with me. "You okay, Mom?" my sister Rachel whispered, squeezing my hand as Mark and Vanessa sealed their union with a kiss. The guests erupted in applause, but I could only manage a weak smile. "I'm fine," I lied, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "I'm here for Ethan." And I was. When Mark had called to tell me about the wedding, he had asked if Ethan could be part of the ceremony. I had agreed immediately, knowing how important it was for our son to feel included in this new chapter of his father's life. What I hadn't expected was the invitation extended to me as well. "Ethan would love to have you there," Mark had said, his voice softer than it had been in years. "And so would I, actually. It would mean a lot to show him that we can still be a family, even if it looks different now." I had hesitated, imagining the whispers, the pitying glances, the awkward small talk with guests who knew I was the ex. But in the end, Ethan's excitement had been the deciding factor. "Mom, you have to come. Dad says I get to wear a special suit and carry the rings and everything." So here I was, watching the man I had once thought I'd grow old with begin a new life with someone else. I should have been angry, or at least resentful. Our divorce had not been amicable. Mark had withdrawn emotionally long before he had physically moved out, spending late nights at the office and weekends with the guys. When I finally confronted him, he claimed I had changed, that I was too focused on being a mother and had forgotten how to be a wife. The argument that followed was explosive. Words were hurled like weapons, old wounds reopened and salted. By the time Ethan came downstairs, his little face streaked with tears and his favorite stuffed dinosaur clutched to his chest, the damage had been done. Mark moved out the next day. The reception was in full swing now. I nursed a glass of champagne as Mark and Vanessa circulated among their guests. Ethan bounded between tables, clearly enjoying his important role and the attention it brought him. He looked so much like his father, the same sandy hair, the same dimple in his left cheek when he smiled. "He's having a good time," Rachel commented, following my gaze. "Yeah," I agreed, watching as Ethan high-fived Mark's best man. "He loves being the center of attention." Rachel hesitated, then said what I knew she had been thinking all day. "Are you sure you're okay with all this?" "Being here, watching Mark." "I'm fine," I interrupted, more sharply than I'd intended. I softened my tone. "Really, Rach? It's been 2 years. I've moved on." Another lie. While I had built a new life for myself, promotion at work, a small but cozy apartment for Ethan and me, even a few tentative dates that had gone nowhere, I couldn't honestly say I had moved on. There were still nights when I lay awake, replaying our arguments, wondering if I could have done something differently. The DJ's voice cut through my thoughts, announcing that it was time for speeches. Mark's best man went first, telling embarrassing college stories that had the crowd roaring with laughter. Then Vanessa's sister gave a tearful speech about finally seeing her sister find true happiness. I smiled and clapped at all the right moments, ignoring the knot in my stomach. Just as the maid of honor finished her speech, there was a commotion near the head table. Ethan had climbed onto a chair and was reaching for the microphone. My heart lurched. This wasn't part of the plan. "Ethan, honey," I half rose from my seat, but Rachel pulled me back down. "Wait," she whispered. "Let him have his moment." Mark looked surprised but nodded to the DJ, who adjusted the microphone for Ethan's height. The room fell silent as my 8-year-old son, looking suddenly so grown up in his little suit, cleared his throat. "Hi, everybody," he began, his voice small but clear. "I'm Ethan. That's my dad." He pointed at Mark. "And that's my new stepmom, Vanessa." He smiled shyly at Vanessa, who blew him a kiss. "And my mom is sitting over there." All heads turned toward me, and I felt my face flush. My mind raced with panic. What was he going to say? Kids Ethan's age didn't filter their thoughts. He could say anything. My chest tightened as I remembered all the times I'd broken down after the divorce. The nights I'd cried when I thought he was asleep. The times I'd vented to my sister on the phone, not realizing Ethan was listening. "I want to tell everyone something important," Ethan continued, his expression serious now. The knot in my stomach tightened. This was it. Whatever he was about to say, I would never live it down. When my mom and dad told me they weren't going to live together anymore, I was really sad. His voice wobbled slightly, and I felt tears spring to my eyes. I didn't understand why. I thought maybe it was because of me. Mark's face fell, and he exchanged a pained look with me across the room. This was exactly what we had tried to prevent, what we had repeatedly assured Ethan wasn't true. But then, Ethan continued, "Mom told me something every night before bed. She said, 'Ethan, sometimes people who love each other very much still can't live together. But that doesn't change how much they love you.'" I froze. Those were indeed the words I had whispered to him night after night, holding him as he cried himself to sleep in those first difficult months. And she also told me something else. Ethan looked directly at me now, his eyes bright. She said that my dad is a good person and that I should always remember all the good things about him. The room was utterly silent. I could feel tears streaming down my face, but I made no move to wipe them away. "And when I stay at Dad's house," Ethan went on, turning to look at Mark, "he tells me that my mom is the strongest, bravest person he knows. He says she's an amazing mom and that I'm lucky to have her." Mark's eyes met mine across the room, and I saw that he was crying too. I had no idea he had been saying those things to Ethan. During our worst arguments, post-divorce, when we were fighting over schedules and child support, I had convinced myself that Mark probably badmouthed me to our son. "So, I just wanted to say," Ethan's voice grew stronger, "that even though my mom and dad don't love each other like husband and wife anymore, they both love me. And they both tell me good things about each other when the other one isn't around." There was a collective awe from the guests, and I saw Vanessa dab at her eyes with a napkin. "And I think that's what family is," Ethan concluded with the simple wisdom that only a child could possess. "People who love each other and say nice things even when it's hard. So I'm happy that my dad found Vanessa, because she makes him smile a lot. And maybe someday my mom will find someone who makes her smile too." He looked at me expectantly, and through my tears, I managed to nod and mouth "I love you." "That's all I wanted to say," Ethan finished, suddenly seeming to realize that everyone was watching him. "Oh, and congratulations, Dad and Vanessa." The room erupted in applause, far more enthusiastic than for any of the previous speeches. Mark stood up and engulfed Ethan in a bear hug, lifting him off the chair. Vanessa joined them, her arm around Ethan's shoulders, whispering something in his ear that made him beam. And then, to my surprise, Mark looked over at me and gestured for me to join them. I hesitated, but Rachel nudged me gently. "Go," she whispered. On shaky legs, I made my way to the front of the room. Mark's eyes were red-rimmed as he reached out a hand to me. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the continued applause. "For being exactly the kind of mother I always knew you would be." He squeezed my hand. "And for what you've been telling Ethan about me." I had no idea. "I didn't know what you'd been saying about me either," I admitted. "Only the truth, he said with a sad smile. Vanessa stepped forward then, and I braced myself for awkwardness. Instead, she surprised me by pulling me into a quick hug. "Thank you for coming today," she said. "It means the world to Ethan and, to Mark." The rest of the reception passed in a blur. Ethan's impromptu speech had changed something in the atmosphere. Guests who had previously avoided me now came over to chat. Several told me what a wonderful job I was doing raising such a thoughtful, articulate boy. Mark's mother, who hadn't spoken more than 2 sentences to me since the divorce, sat down at my table and actually asked how I was doing. As the night wound down, I found myself at the bar, ordering one last glass of wine before we left. Mark appeared at my side, looking more relaxed than he had all day. "Quite a kid we've got," he said, leaning against the bar. "Yeah," I agreed. "He definitely stole the show." Mark laughed. "Vanessa says I'd better get used to it." Apparently, she was the same way as a child, always the center of attention. An awkward silence fell between us. There was so much I wanted to say, but I wasn't sure where to begin. "Listen," Mark said finally, "I know things haven't been easy between us, and I know I've said and done things that hurt you." He took a deep breath. "I'm sorry for that." "I'm sorry too," I said, and I meant it. "We both made mistakes. But one thing we did right was Ethan," he continued. "And after hearing what he said tonight, I think maybe we've been doing better at this co-parenting thing than we thought." I nodded, feeling a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying begin to lift from my shoulders. "Maybe we have." "I was thinking," Mark said hesitantly, "maybe we could try to be more intentional about it. Maybe meet once a month, just the 3 of us, to check in. Make sure we're all on the same page." "I'd like that," I said, surprised by how much I meant it. "And," he added, "Vanessa and I would love to have you over for dinner sometime. If that wouldn't be too weird." I laughed. It would definitely be weird, but ... I thought about Ethan's words, about family being people who love each other and say nice things even when it's hard. But I think I'd like that too. As I watched Mark rejoin Vanessa on the dance floor, his arm slipping around her waist with easy familiarity, I felt a pang of something not quite jealousy, not quite regret, but a bittersweet acknowledgement of what was lost and what remained. Rachel found me a few minutes later, ready to go. She asked, handing me my purse. "Almost," I said. "I just need to find Ethan and say goodbye to a few people." I found my son sitting at a table with some of the other children, proudly showing off a piece of wedding cake he had saved because it has the most frosting flowers. "Hey, buddy," I said, smoothing his rumpled hair. "It's time to go. Say goodbye to your dad and Vanessa, okay?" "Okay, Mom." He carefully wrapped his cake in a napkin and stuffed it in his pocket. "Did you like my speech?" I knelt down so we were eye to eye. "I loved your speech, Ethan. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." He beamed. "I was nervous, but I remembered what you told me about being brave." "You were very brave," I assured him. "And what you said about me and your dad. It meant a lot to both of us." "I just said what's true." He shrugged, with the straightforward honesty of childhood. "You and Dad both love me, and you both say nice things about each other. That's important, right?" "It's very important," I agreed, my throat tight with emotion. "And I promise I'll always try to remember that." As we drove home that night, Ethan fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the excitement of the day. Rachel, who was driving, glanced at me in the passenger seat. "You okay?" she asked for what felt like the 100th time that day. But this time, my answer wasn't a lie. "Yeah," I said, looking back at my sleeping son. "I really am." The truth was, I had gone to the wedding expecting to endure a day of painful reminders of what I had lost. Instead, thanks to the innocent wisdom of an 8-year-old boy, I had gained something unexpected, a new understanding of what it means to truly put your child first, and perhaps the beginning of a different kind of relationship with my ex-husband, not as lovers, or even friends, exactly, but as partners in the most important job either of us would ever have. As I tucked Ethan into bed that night, he stirred sleepily. "Mom," he murmured. "Yes, sweetheart." Are you sad that Dad married Vanessa? I considered the question carefully, wanting to be honest but appropriate. I'm happy that your dad is happy, I said finally. And I'm very happy that you have Vanessa in your life now too. But what about you? He persisted, fighting to keep his eyes open. Dad has Vanessa. Who do you have? I smiled and kissed his forehead. I have you, silly. And that's more than enough for now. As he drifted off to sleep, I thought about the journey that had brought us here, the pain, the anger, the sleepless nights, and now, finally, this fragile new beginning. It wasn't the life I had imagined for myself, but looking at my son's peaceful face, I knew it was a good life nonetheless. And maybe, just maybe, Ethan was right. Maybe someday I would find someone who made me smile the way Vanessa made Mark smile. But for now, I was content with the knowledge that even in our brokenness, we had somehow managed to give our son what he needed most, the certainty that he was loved, and the example of parents who could speak kindly of each other, even when it was hard. In the end, isn't that what family is really about? That unexpected moment at my ex's wedding taught me that sometimes our children understand more about love and forgiveness than we do. Ethan's innocent words bridged years of hurt and resentment, creating a path forward none of us could have imagined. What do you think? Have your children ever surprised you with their wisdom? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Plot Twist Life for more real-life stories that remind us how unpredictable and beautiful life can be. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. And remember, sometimes the most powerful lessons come from the most unexpected sources. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.